Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, hosted by Concept 3D. On this podcast, we like to discuss topics around creating and capturing demand in higher education. Before we jump in, I wanted to give a quick brief and shout out to our sponsor, Concept 3D. Concept 3D has served over 600 happy customers in higher education with our best-in-class interactive maps, virtual tours, and event calendars. We help bring your campus to life virtually. Improve your campus communications, student engagement, and recruitment with our powerful virtual solutions. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. Today, I'm super thrilled to have Erin Stine join us. Erin is a leader in higher ed with experience in admissions, enrollment, and more recently, EdTech. She's currently serving as the Regional VP of Education Solutions at Motomatic. Thanks so much for joining us, Erin.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today.
And before we jump in, I love to ask this question. What do you love about higher ed?
Absolutely. The first thing, you have to say the students first. I think so for so many of us, we're drawn to higher ed because our journey to higher ed itself, certainly for me as an individual, was so impactful. Both the experience of getting there, the experience I had there, the changes I had, at everything from my worldview to the opportunities I had working on and being a part of a campus. So love being able to help students make that journey as well. But for me, the other big thing is just the people who work within the higher ed space are incredible. Whether you're on a campus or working for a company that is ed adjacent, just incredible relationships and conversations. And one of the things I love about my work now is there's just so much to do. The world has changed so significantly. We're facing changing demographics, changing challenges, and work that also helps those people who work on campuses to support those students. Not just to make lives easier, but to really make sure that there's great pathways for those people who are so invested in those students to spend that quality time and maybe not get bogged down in some of the day-to-day lifts. So love thinking of ways that we can really smooth that pathway for colleagues who are working within institutions today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to jump into some of the topics we discussed previously. I know one that you work with Motomatic today, as well as just something that you strongly believe in. But a lot of students, they start their journey, whether it's understanding or awareness around an institution or a school, and then they might never show up on class on day one. And I think one of the topics we talked about was how can schools and universities recapture and reconvert students that have gotten stuck? And if you want to start off by defining what you mean by stuck, I think that'd be helpful for our audience too.
Yeah. So stuck or a stalled student. What I mean by that, or what we might mean by that, where I work at Motomatic, is a student who maybe has a step in front of them, an action to take, and for many reasons might not be taking it. Now, this could look a lot of different ways, right? It happens within the enrollment funnel. Someone is excited enough to fill out an application, but maybe they don't get all their materials in. Or they might even get as far as being admitted, but they don't take that final step to attending. Or even, as you mentioned, right, someone might be attending and they step away. And so they're no longer moving through their educational journey. And what we see, not only in the work that I do, but actually this popped up if you haven't seen it, Inside Higher Ed and the Chronicle just ran articles on it, but there's a lot of barriers in a student's way, right? There's the financial aspect itself, but there's also this list of just psychological factors, especially now, that might also be present. So a student might, quote unquote, be getting stuck because the educational journey is hard and they're stressed about it. That there's opportunities to get a job and make money in a different way, that maybe they're not sure about what they want to do. So taking the step
Hmm.
forward to a class feels really overwhelming. And within those different factors, I think one of the first things a school could do is unpack what are those factors that are particularly impacting your students, and how can you address that, right? It's not just, hey, take this action, take this action, take this action, emailing over and over again, but how can you speak to a student to say, here's what we think might be in your way or challenging you in this moment. And here's how we might be able
Hmm.
to help you get past that moment.
Gotcha. And are there ways to understand like the right questions to ask or understanding what challenges students are going through?
Yeah, so I think one of the first places, just ask your students. Talk to an
Right.
institution the other day. I know it sounds so easy, but they were right.
Right.
It's one thing to ask; it's another to take the time and energy to capture, and really be able to
Hmm.
unpack and understand. Um, so I think that can be really key. I'll also say that and maybe it helps just to give a little more background of where I'm coming from in this conversation. At Botomatic, we work in this space of stuck installed students. So if someone isn't taking a step forward, how do you get them to
Hmm.
change their behavior and do that thing? And our background is actually as a motivation science company. So we're specifically unpacking those psychological factors to try and speak to a student directly. And we're doing all of that via social media. So we're specifically reaching out on a school's behalf to students who might have been identified as having gotten stuck somewhere, to be able
Hmm.
to share and hopefully address some of these challenges that they might ultimately be facing. Um, so I think also just other things to keep in mind within that are, not just asking them, but really, really leaving open the question, like not just this is what we need you to do, but like what do you need from us? And this gets really challenging, I think, in offices that are overtaxed, that they have just these long lists to do. But I feel really inspired by how this thinking is being revamped and reevaluated when I hear things like a community college I was talking to the other day said to me, we do this full court press for an action right around the deadline, right? Like that's all we can do is gather our energy and
Right.
say, now's when we're doing the call campaign. Even if we get a couple people, we're doing it now because the deadline's next week. And what they could at least articulate and recognize was, we actually don't want to be doing that. We want to be reaching out to students in a timeline that will actually be more helpful for them, to give them the time and space in order to be able to really think through these various challenges, um, to offer our services, not just when we need the action, but when do they need the information in order to thoughtfully and purposefully take that action.
That's very interesting. And are you like delivering some of that information that students need through social media? Like in my head, like I think, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, I'm thinking like hype videos, right? Energy videos that like help
Yeah.
create excitement around an institution. Maybe it's showing game day or showing like a really cool like physics lecture or something, right? Are you also like getting into the weeds of like process, like, hey, like so this is your deadlines coming up. Like I'm curious, like what kind of content you're able to deliver when you're talking about that.
Yeah. So, first of all, like, I love where you went immediately with the high energy and the
Right.
attention getting part, right? Like, we certainly want our content to feel relatable and
Hmm.
feel like it's sort of seamlessly blending in a way that's like drawing you to it. We're working on these different principles. Everything we're putting out, right? It's one thing to be like, this is so cute. This is a cat driving a car, but that needs to connect to something, or it needs to connect to an action or a feeling or something that might motivate and help someone ultimately change their mind in this space. So
Hmm.
we're absolutely thinking of it in that way of content that might really feel natural and native for someone to see. The other thing that's exciting in our work that we're doing, and for so many schools out there, right? you have these huge lists of students most likely that raise their hand at some point, right? Like if I see something, I went to undergrad at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I know RIT, so when it pops up in my feed, I say, oh yeah, what are they up to now?
Hmm.
And so there's already this baseline familiarity, which makes it feel, I think, um, sort of like an extra excitement to see, oh, I wonder what is going on with that. And so this like nudges along the path to get a student maybe to go back to taking that class they might have left, or thinking that, this was something that was really present in my mind at one point. How, what do I need to do to get there? And laying those little breadcrumbs out for them in a way that feels digestible, that feels like it's something they could do, I think are some of the things that are really key in making content that feels like something you would want to engage in. And I'll say, I always like framing this from, right, I could talk about the work I do all day, but I love hearing reactions and responses from institutions. And so
Right.
someone said to me recently, you know right, what if you're looking, you're hoping to have more students apply, and they've gone far enough to inquire, but you're trying to push them to apply next. You cannot email them every single day, nor would you want to say apply now,
Right.
still apply. I mean, sometimes that happens, I think, but you don't want that. You might not even really want to do that weekly, but you
Right.
can really use social in a different way to sort
Uh-huh.
of gently nudge and be present and sort of humming along in the background. That's the thing too. We're all accustomed to this, right? We know.
Right.
We see it every day. And
Right.
so sort of that gentle reminder, I think of it as, I think also makes it um, a more natural and comfortable transition.
I just out of curiosity, I know in a lot of for a lot of students, friends and family are also big decision makers as well. Is that also a
Yeah.
target audience from like a social media? I'll call it remarketing. I'm not if it's sure if it's the right term here, but is that
Yeah.
also an audience that you keep in mind when you're trying to move the needle?
We do. Like, we're definitely thinking about, how to unpack these other key decision makers that might be surrounding a student, and a student of any age, right? That
Hmm.
your family might be influential in some way. Your family might need information, for example, on how to submit the FAFSA because they've never done it before themselves. And so,
Right.
are there other pieces of information that we can make present for a student and available for those that are supporting them? That is absolutely a present conversation in our minds. And I hear more and more, and I see it, a request from institutions of how do we involve parents and family members in this process, which is a very different shift than the helicopter parent of a couple of years ago. So
Right.
absolutely would encourage that.
Got
But you
it.
also said something I think is I think is really great and interesting to point out, the idea of retargeting, because that's something I get asked about our work a lot. Like, yeah, cool, social retargeting, we do it. We're working already. And
Huh.
at Motomatic, we're really specifically working with a list of students from an institution to go to them directly, which is exciting. They've raised their hand in some way. They've identified um,
Right.
themselves or been a part of that community. So we're able to really give them some direct steps and pathways in order to help them move forward.
Got it. And this just reminded me, you're not, I know we've been really talking about net new students, right? But I
Yeah,
believe you also assist with students who have dropped out after year one, which we saw like huge number of, obviously in 2020, 2021. I'm not sure what year you're supposed to call the dropout year, but obviously during the pandemic, there's a lot of dropouts and a
yeah.
lot of schools I feel like are missing the mark in trying to reconvert students who already attended classes for a little bit. Like how do those campaigns look different from what you're doing to
Yeah.
attract new students?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think stop outs, I think I see an article about them in the Chronicle every single day.
Right.
There's this really deep awareness of this group of students that was so impacted by the last several years. So That's absolutely a group that we do a lot of work with, and I would encourage schools to make sure they're taking a good look at. I actually saw an article on this just this week that one of the recommendations was, right, who are the students you can go after that would be most likely? Is it the most recent, the most close to graduating, and prioritizing those? And certainly with limited resources and staff, that's a place to start. Something that we do in our work every day is because we work on a pay only for results basis, we're able to go and sort of speak to all of them, not just last semesters, not just last year's, 3 years
Right.
worth of students that might have stepped away. And especially, for some of these, the community colleges that have been so adversely impacted, large regionals, we're able to see some really incredible results to bring back dozens, and in some case, even hundreds of students to register for an upcoming semester.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I think you gave an example. I know you work mostly with community colleges, right? And you had a pretty significant number reconvert. So like they attended classes, dropped out, or deferred from classes for the next year, and they came back, right? And it was like quite an impressive number. I can't remember
Yeah,
the
I mean,
percentage of the school that was, but yeah, I remember you sharing
there's
those results with me.
I'll give you a high level picture. So we work with about 150 schools now. Over half are community colleges.
Wow.
And for example, we work with the Wisconsin Technical System, their community colleges. We work with over
Uh-huh.
25 of the California community colleges. We work with 6 of the schools in the SUNY system, and we're not bringing back in a lot of these cases like dozens of students. It's hundreds of students
Right.
that really need like this sort of help and push and guidance at a large scale. And that's the kind of work that, right, you and I can't sit down. I mean, we could try. We can't sit down and call 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Um, and so really giving schools the opportunity to sort of have a message and speak to this really, this group that was just really impacted, that had this super disruptive experience, and
Hmm.
really needs some help and guidance on how to take best next steps forward. And we're doing that on social, so
It's amazing.
it's hopefully a really easy lift. And actually, I have to admit, one of my when I was AVP of enrollment, one of my favorite collaborations and interactions was with our marketing and communications team, really working in lockstep between enrollment and that team. And that's the really strong partnership that we also are often working with in our work at Motomatic, how to really combine and use those efforts together in order to really impact a group of students.
That's amazing. And I'm just trying to think from a business conversation level, like what are you seeing in terms of like ROI of metrics? Are the net, I'm assuming that reconverting, and I apologize if that's the wrong word here, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that reconverting students is less costly than trying to get a new student to come to the school, right? I'm curious what kind of results you're seeing from like a social media marketing perspective.
Yeah. So we do all of our work at Motomatic on this pay only for results model,
Uh-huh.
which means that we're working with an institution to say, okay, um, what is, if let's use stop outs. If there's a price per registration that we could help lift you, again, this is probably from a list that's been unresponsive to all other efforts. What is the return we could get if they
Mhm.
attended? What that student would that in turn mean to you? And so what we're able to do is get schools essentially a 3, 5, 8, 9 times return on their investment as student to ultimately them coming back to them. And also, I mean, we're talking a lot about publics and community colleges where the cost to the student is actually probably quite accessible. In some cases, with some of what's out there,
Right.
it's even close to free,
That's a
but
good point.
the institution still needs to get their attention to take those steps forward. Um, And so it's certainly we're seeing just this incredible impact of students who've stopped out, or the other sort of newer term is opt out. Someone who maybe was interested enough to even apply, but never actually attended, in order to really make sure to spend the time and energy to message those students to let them know that they're welcome, that their fears and their hesitations can be addressed, in order to take a step forward that hopefully is really going to be for the benefit of the student in the long run.
Yeah, that's amazing. Some of those ROI metrics are really, really high. So I was pretty impressed to just hear that as well. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us today. I was wondering if our listeners want to reconnect with you somewhere, where should they go?
So I'm definitely on LinkedIn, Erin Stine. I'm also at Erin at motomatic.com. If you have any questions either about, what I've shared today, or just these, questions of how to better motivate a student to take those key steps forward, or just want to talk stuck or stalled students, would always be really happy to connect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And please catch us on the next one. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.